If you're a buyer or seller out there and you're wondering what the escrow process looks like in a residential real estate transaction, this video is for you. I have the privilege of sitting next to Kilita Smith, a 20-year escrow veteran over at Glen Oaks Escrow, one of our preferred vendors. We've been working with her for the last 20 years. Very educated, has her MBA at USC. She's a wealth of knowledge. We're going to be going over what her role is as a neutral party in the transaction, what she can and cannot do to help both buyers and sellers out within the transaction. We'll talk about your earnest money deposit and where that goes. We'll cover wire fraud, and we'll cover what makes escrow unique here in the Los Angeles area. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I'm Paul Salazar, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Kilita, let's get right into it. You're obviously a veteran. You've been in the business for a long time.
Yeah.
Tell us what happens once escrow is opened. What's that process look like so you can educate the buyers and the sellers out there?
Sure. Well, to start, I'd like to talk about what it means when escrow is open, because a lot of people don't understand when that actually happens. Mm-hmm. And really, escrow is technically open once we have a fully executed contract and the deposit.
Okay.
That's why getting the deposit within that timeline is it's crucial. It's critical because one without the other, escrow isn't technically open. But once we have both of those, we're off to the races, right? So there's all of these things happening at the same time. Escrow holder is ordering the preliminary title report so we can look at the condition of the property to see if there are any liens or judgments or any issues with ownership on the property. We're also ordering natural hazard disclosure reports that, talks about the area that the property is in, discloses any hazards. So we're also ordering HOA documents if necessary. We're also drafting escrow documents to go out for buyers and sellers to sign because that's crucial. We have to have our escrow instructions signed. Yeah. Otherwise, we really can't act as escrow holder.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
You said that escrow doesn't open until you have a fully executed contract and the deposit. Mm-hmm. On the contract, as a standard, it's a 3 business days to wire the deposit into escrow. Mm-hmm. So if the wire doesn't come in until that third business day, is escrow still open even though we've already communicated to you, we got the contract into you? So tell me about that timeline before you get the deposit.
Well, so even in the timeline before the deposit, once we get a contract, we do start working on the file. We're ordering the reports. It's really just from a legal standpoint as far as escrow being legally open, right?
Hey, so I didn't know that. I'm learning.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Another thing with that in regards to the deposit. So we get the contract, we're still moving along. We're not going to sit and wait until we get, the deposit to act. But in regards to the deposit, if it's from a third-party depositor, it's crucial to have the third-party deposit letter. Different escrow companies call it different things. But we have to have the third-party instruction signed because the deposit must come from the buyer. And without that third-party instruction letter signed, technically, it's not from the buyer.
Oh,
so technically, you legally still don't have the deposit in escrow. So things have gotten very formal, very strict.
Yeah.
But your escrow company holder should be helping assist keep all these things on track.
Sure.
So.
And I also want the buyers and sellers to understand that even though technically the escrow is not open, you're still already working.
Yes.
And also the timelines on the contract are still going.
Oh,
so
yes.
That has nothing to do with the actual timelines on the contract. The timelines on the contract start once that last party signs acceptance of the contract, either on a counter or on the purchase contract, correct?
It's so interesting you bring that up because...
Am I wrong?
There has been an update. It was earlier this year to what's considered the date of acceptance. So yes, it used to be the date of the last signature on the contract. We're all used to that forever. Now the new contract, it's the date of delivery of the last signature.
So if my client signs at 11 p.m., I don't wake up. I'm already asleep, and that's on a Thursday, or and then next morning is a Friday, and then I deliver it. Say I'm repping the buyer, I deliver it to the listing agent. Once he or she, that listing agent, receives it, then that's acceptance.
Yeah, if we're talking about, let's say, a seller counter offer, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're representing the buyer made the offer, we've got a seller counter offer in play. You don't deliver it until that next day.
That's
that
acceptance.
technically is the date of acceptance.
That's good to know.
Yes.
And it's when the email is sent to the listing agent, or once the seller sees it.
It's delivery. So
Okay.
once the email is sent.
Okay.
However you send it, in person, email. Yes.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a new change.
Yeah.
But either way, once we get the contract, we start working. We're not going to wait. But the contract itself is the agreement between buyer and seller. So those timelines, as you said, are in full force and effect, regardless of what's going on with the escrow company.
Yeah.
So reports are getting ordered, documentation is going out. We're securely sending wire instructions to the buyer.
And we'll talk about that later on, because that's really important.
Crucial. We're introducing ourselves to the seller. So all of these things are kind of happening at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So for those that haven't been in a transaction, let's educate them on what an escrow company is. Because if people are coming here from New York or from other states that don't have escrow companies or an escrow neutral party, they may be confused as why am I paying this extra service for this company, and who do they represent? A lot of the times on the purchase contract, the sellers are the ones who pick the actual escrow and title companies, which is AKA the listing agent.
Yeah.
Right? So tell us more about that.
So you're right. Not all states across the U.S. are escrow states. So California is, most states on the West Coast are as well. And in Southern California, it's common for the seller to choose escrow and title.
Only in Southern California. Okay.
Northern California is a little different, and it's a different beast a little bit. But escrow, it's escrow holder, right? We are the neutral third party with a fiduciary responsibility to buyers and sellers. Our responsibility is not to the agent, it's not to the lender, it's not to the loan broker. And we're really a safe, you can almost think of it, where we hold documentation and funds until all parties complete the terms of their agreement, which is the contract in and of itself, if there are any amendments that come up. But we are that neutral third party to really have that layer of trust between buyer and seller, that, the sellers are being honest and the buyers are getting what they think they're getting as far as the product, right? The property or the land. So that's our job. It's to safeguard documentation and funds until performance has happened. The buyer's performed and the seller has performed. Yeah. Once performance has happened, we go to recording, and then we're able to pay and we're able to transfer ownership. So we're really like a safeguard.
Okay, sounds good. And then let's talk about legal advice, because there's a lot of contracts going on in other states. They hire a lawyer for that, so that's a little bit easier, I think, for them.
Yes.
In terms of feeling confident about it. Obviously, CAR has developed a ton of contracts.
Yes.
And more every single year. Thank you, CAR.
Yeah.
So let's talk about legal advice. Are you guys allowed to give legal advice to either party?
We are not. We're not attorneys. And giving legal advice, well, then now we're not being neutral, right? Because any advice you give to the seller is for the benefit of the seller, and likewise to the buyer. So no, a lot of times, and of course it gets tricky because you want to be of service to your buyer and seller, but a lot of times we direct them to, that would be a great question to talk to your agent about. Or sometimes they may have a real estate attorney attached to the transaction. Yeah. But practicing law as an escrow holder is a big no-no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about, obviously you are the neutral party, and there's a lot of different companies involved within every single transaction. You said title.
Yes.
We have lenders, attorneys sometimes. We have the agents on both sides.
Yes.
The brokerages on both sides, buyer and seller, trustees sometimes. So it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So what you do, like the work you do is not easy.
Right.
But let's talk about, are you able to push things forward with like lenders and title, or is that your job?
Well, when you say push things forward, I do think that an escrow officer can help, what I would say, drive the transaction forward. So what does that mean? It means doing our part to get reports out, documentation out, following up regarding signed documentation in a timely manner. If there is a lender involved, getting the lender what they need up front so that they can disclose in a timely manner. So that there are things that we can do as an escrow holder to kind of make sure that things should be moving along. Now, of course, if a seller is stalling out for some unknown reason, or the lender is stalling out for some unknown reason, they're having difficulty qualifying their client and they're not communicating that to anyone. Those are things that we can't control. But I think as long as we're taking the steps that we're supposed to take and constantly communicating, providing updates to the agents and to the buyers and sellers, that's really how we can help move a transaction forward in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that out of all the parties involved, the communication for the escrow officer to the entire transaction is very, very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, that escrow officers have to remember that they must be neutral. You get information from one side, you have to share it with the other side. Like,
Oh, I didn't know that.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, you do.
Okay.
Because otherwise, again, you're not being neutral, right? It's to the benefit of, well, this is going on, but don't tell this. Like, no, we have to provide information and share it, which, as an aside, is one reason we do not like to receive requests for repairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very important for those agents out there. I've made
Yes.
that mistake a couple times back in the day when I was young, a little dumb. But yeah, Kilita, let's talk about the deposit, because
Yes.
that is a big, I feel like, misunderstanding for a lot of buyers out there and sellers.
Yes.
They're a little nervous about, giving that deposit to escrow. Is it gone?
Right.
Is it safe?
Yes.
Who has it? All these questions.
Right.
So give us an overview about the deposit.
So the interesting thing about the deposit, I remember when I first started in escrow many years ago.
We won't talk about how long ago.
So when it came to the contingencies, right, it was like once the time period passed, if there was no objection, they were assumed to be waived. So now the deposit is held in escrow, and a lot of buyers, that's one of the things when you talk about when can I lose it, the buyer is entitled to a refund of their deposit if they cancel within their contingency period. Mm-hmm. Canceling outside of the contingency period, it gets a little hairy. But the deposit is held in escrow. We have what's called a trust account. And so we hold it in the trust account. It goes towards the purchase price if the deal closes. What happens if it doesn't close, right? That's when things get really sticky and tricky. Yeah. So let's say that the deal doesn't close and it cancels. If it cancels in a timely fashion and buyers and sellers agree, because we must have it in writing. A buyer can cancel, a seller can cancel, but we must have mutual instruction to release that deposit, to release funds.
That means both buyer and seller have to sign off on it.
Both buyer and sellers have to tell us who receives the deposit. But until then, we're holding it in escrow. It is insured, right? There's layers to it, right? So there's the layer that it has with the FDIC insured, which we know those amounts are insured up to $250,000. But your escrow company should have a fidelity bond, should have errors and omissions insurance, so that because an escrow company, we are liable to a large extent for the funds that are in our care. So the money is very safe.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
So sellers can't just get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the buyers out there that are watching, this is really important, is when you're in a transaction on the actual car residential purchase agreement, there's specific instructions for escrow and specific instructions on when that money is released. Like you said earlier, once the buyer signs off on all their contingencies, and it's an active signature, it's not a passive thing like it was, I don't know how long ago.
Right.
But that was before I even started. So it's probably like in the 90s or I don't know, a long time ago. But I actually like the way it is now. The buyers sign a form. Once that form is signed, and it is, do we have to, I forgot, do we deliver it to you or just let you know that it's been signed?
Well, it's a variety. Sometimes it's fine to deliver the contingency removal.
Yeah.
We might do an amendment, or an agent will tell us and we'll make note of it.
Gotcha. And then you have to also have an additional escrow amendment for that as well, right? To release the deposit. Well, actually, no. The deposit is not released. Sometimes
Right.
it is. We will talk about that in a second.
Right.
But if you're a buyer out there and you're doing inspections and there's something wrong with the house, and you want to back out of the deal, your deposit is safe.
Yes, it is.
Your deposit is safe. I know that sometimes escrow companies, they will charge a fee for their services.
Right.
Sometimes they don't, but
Yeah.
it's very rare that I've seen it. But every once in a while, it's they'll charge us a very small fee, a
Right.
few $100s. But your deposit is safe until you sign off on that form. So when you sign off on that form, make sure that you are very, very ready to go into that transaction and ready to close that deal. Because if you don't close that deal,
Yes.
what happens? If the buyer has now signed off on all their contingencies and they're ready to close and something happens, and this happened to me about 4 or 5 times in my whole career, so it does happen. It's very rare when a buyer now wants to back out.
It happened to me this week.
Well, I mean, you
Yeah.
do a ton of transactions, so I'm sure it probably happens to you, a lot more than me.
Not often, actually. So, yes, you had a situation, the buyer has signed off on contingencies, right? Because that signals to everyone, I am all in, 100% committed to this purchase. Signed off on contingencies, we received loan documents, and the buyer wanted to back out 2 days from closing. So in that situation, we did receive mutual cancellation instructions, but the deposit went to the seller.
Yeah.
As
So-
liquidated damages.
Yeah,
which
for
is
sure.
also part of the contract.
100%. So there is an additional paragraph within the purchase contract, and that on that page there's actually 3 initials for this reason.
Yeah.
Because a buyer doesn't have to sign that, initial that, or neither does a seller. So that box can be left unchecked. And then
Yes.
at that point, then I think you have to bring in attorneys, or I've never had that happen to me, so I don't know.
It can get messy. You can have situations where the buyer has removed their contingencies and the seller is not agreeing, right, to even just sign off on, give a mutual, because the buyer will say, I removed my contingencies, but I want my money back.
Yeah, of course. They're going to always try for it, right?
Right, of course. Like, we all want our money back if we
Yeah.
can. But in certain situations, there are no refunds. So there can be situations where the seller's not signing. And worst case scenario, it may have to go to mediation. Court would be much further after that. Normally, mediation or litigation resolves the issue, but it's still at an expense. And typically, whoever loses
Has to pay for it.
has to pay those
Yeah.
legal expenses. Yeah.
For sure. So I guess the tip here is that if you're a buyer, just make sure that you are ready to close on the deal when you sign that form, because once that's the most important form within the escrow transaction, at least for the agents, is once that form is signed, at least for me, I feel 99% sure this deal is going to close. But there's always that 1% chance. I mean, it happened earlier this year where I was representing a seller. The buyer went hard in the deal. They removed all of their contingencies, and then they backed out 2 days before the close of escrow. But they actually also released the wire over to the seller. So let's talk about that, because a lot of times this actually happens where if you're negotiating with the buyer on requests for repairs, the seller may say, okay, I'm going to give you a credit or a price reduction, or I'll fix this or that. But once I sign off on this, I want you to release the deposit to me. And then once it's gone, it's basically gone, right?
I'm kind of dealing with that now.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, so we're talking about our early release of funds, and you're right. A lot of times, if it's for, it's like in response to a price reduction or credit, and the seller wants proof that the buyer is committed. So if you have an early release of funds and the buyer cancels, well, every escrow company might handle this differently. But if we don't have money, we don't have money.
Yeah.
And if you want a refund of that money, it gets tricky, because now you have to kind of deal with the seller directly and outside of escrow for the return of your deposit.
Yeah.
Because you signed it with full knowledge. And I know for us, the early release of funds, we send it to the buyer via DocuSign using multi-factor authentication.
Oh, I like
it's
that.
either that or have it notarized.
Oh, okay, that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're actually verifying 2 times that it's the right signer.
Well,
Okay.
not only that it's the right signer, but that you have every intention
Of doing
to
it.
release this money to the seller. So I have a situation. There was an early release of funds. The buyer wants the money back from the seller, and it's just in limbo while they kind of hash it out legally outside of escrow.
So what's the longest period that you've had to hold a deposit due to this kind of dispute?
Luckily, this hasn't happened very often, but I would say maybe about 3 months.
3 months. Okay.
Yeah.
So not like super long, because
No.
at some point one of the sides is going to be like, okay,
someone
like, it's my
gives.
fault. I
Yeah.
tried.
Yeah.
Seller's not budging, or maybe the seller's all right. I'll give you X amount. I'll give you
Right, because it can become very emotional.
Yeah.
We're talking about people's
Yeah.
hard-earned money. So
Yeah, for sure.
whether you're the buyer or the seller, you're going to fight for as long as you can for that. Yeah.
I really like, I don't know how other states are in terms of what they have as a deposit. I do like the fact that over here there is a deposit. I do like the fact that the buyers have a chance to do their investigation, because in other states it's like once you're in the deal, it's like you're going to close.
Yeah.
There's no inspections or anything like that.
Right.
You have your chance to do that before,
Exactly.
but when you do it before, you also don't have a contract with the seller if you're the buyer, and so you can do all these inspections, and then somebody else comes in
Right.
and gets
And
the
gets the
property,
deal.
and you lose all this money, right?
Yeah.
So I actually do think it's a pretty fair system here in California on how it's structured with the buyer and the seller, and the deposit, and then once
It's a
everything's
way to protect.
yes,
parties.
yeah, both sides.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's very fair.
Yeah.
Anything else about the deposit? We'll talk about wire fraud in a bit.
I don't think so.
Okay, all right,
We
so that's
can-
good. Yeah, we'll go into that
Okay.
in a second. Kalita, our third topic. What happens when there's a dispute between seller and buyer? I mean, obviously, we covered the deposit part, but other disputes within the transaction. How do you deal with that?
So disputes, which do happen often, right? It's really tough for us as escrow holder because we are to remain neutral. When there's a dispute between the parties, we really must depend on the agents, or if there are any attorneys attached to the deal, to help work out whatever the issue is. I think as an escrow officer, I can give opinions maybe based on past experiences, so, well, in the past when I've seen something like this, it's looked like this, but you should definitely talk to your agent, because it really ties our hands. When we have a dispute, it really puts escrow on hold. Even though the parties might still be going back and forth, or agents are dealing with one another, as escrow holder, it kind of slows and stops our train. So it's really tough because we can't give legal advice. We can't tell the parties what to do, even when we know how it should be handled, right? So we have to find ways to maybe suggest solutions.
Yeah.
In a way, softly.
Yeah, you're in a very interesting situation.
Yes.
Because the agents, when they're not repping both sides, they have to, they have a fiduciary with their client.
Yes.
But you don't. You have to stay neutral, and that's really, really tough. And
Yes.
I'm reminded by how tough that is whenever I have a transaction where I'm repping both sides, because I'm almost kind of in that neutral spot like you are.
Those are where when it comes to buyer and seller disputes, they're the worst when we have an agent who's representing both sides.
Ooh, yeah, that's
That's where
tough.
we see it doesn't go well, or it takes a really long time to get resolved, because I can only imagine as the agent on both sides, like, who do you bat for? Right?
Yeah.
You're batting for both sides
Yeah.
with opposing,
Interest.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's even more difficult. But as far as escrow, it's almost like we have to just stay silent in a way.
Which is also, I feel like, in a way, once you're used to that, it's it almost easier because you like, hey, like you're almost being like, hey, I can't help you here. I can advise based on my experience, all this stuff,
or
right?
gently influence.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly. But this also, makes me feel that, picking an escrow officer that has a lot of experience is very, very important, right? We've been working for the last several years. You're my go-to. I love working with you.
Thank you, Paul.
And the reason why is because I just feel comfortable that you're able to handle a lot of different scenarios that the transaction may throw at you, and you're gonna handle them with a lot of care and respect. You have a lot of experience. So let's talk about how an experienced escrow officer can help manage these more difficult transactions, because we are living in an area of very high stakes, right? These buyers and sellers are very wealthy. They love to sue. Not all of them, but a lot of them like to sue if they don't get what they want.
Right.
So let's talk about experience and how important that is in a transaction.
I do think that an experienced escrow officer is very important because we have seen a variety of issues and a variety of solutions to those issues. We know when perhaps we need to push title. Now, that's something I can do. I can push title. I can connect with my title rep or title officer to say, hey, this is going on. I've seen it resolved like this before. Is this a solution that would work for you? And I can get a yes or a no, and I can take that back to present to clients when there's a matter of dispute. Even with the lenders, I can push the lenders the same way. So other parties, that's where that expertise comes in, because you learn who you can reach out to push or to even problem solve with, and then you can bring those ideas. Well, per title, per the lender, this is an option forward. And if you don't have that breadth of experience, you wouldn't even know that you could do that. So
yeah, it's super, super important to have. So if you're a buyer or seller watching here, usually the seller's agent, the listing agent, is the one who picks escrow and title for the most part. I would say maybe like 90% of the time.
In Southern California.
Yes. In Southern California. Thank you. but there's obviously, depending on the market, depending on how long the house has been on the market, sometimes the buyers have more influence. And so the buyer's agent wants to pick escrow and title. And it's important, for me, I always feel very grateful. And I actually said this to our team the other day. I was like, I'm so grateful for Kilita and for Allison and for our whole team, because you guys really support us. And I know when things get really difficult, I can call you. You're going to be honest with me. I'm not going to get some bullshit. You're going to just say straight up, hey, this is the issue. This is what we can do. And that makes me feel a lot more confident in a transaction, that I have somebody on my side that is educated, that has experience, that has really good communication skills, and that is going to tell me the issues how it is.
Right.
You're not going to sugarcoat it. You're not going to try to make me feel good. It's just like, no, this is what's going on here. So it's really important if you're a seller and or a buyer, that you know who is going to be escrow and title, because even though they are neutral parties, title's also neutral, kind of, or not really.
I would say no.
No,
no.
They're more for the sellers, right? Because the owner's title policy. Or they're just like a vendor that provides a service.
I would say, I definitely don't want to minimize what they do.
Yeah.
But they're not in the same position, right, as escrow holder. They're really looking at, they're kind of even more brutal in their truths. Like, you want to close? You want title insurance? This is the issue. This is what we need. Point blank, period.
They're not trying to massage.
They're not worried about massage or feelings or anything like that. So it's a little different.
A little different.
Yeah.
A little different. Yeah. But yeah, just to kind of wrap this little section up, it's just really important to understand who you're working with. I always tell every agent that I'm working with is like, hey, if they don't know who you are, they'll be like, I'll just let them know, hey, she's amazing. You're going to love her. And you actually may even want to work with her afterwards,
Thank you.
But it's so important when a seller is looking to hire their agent. I'm always sending my sellers your net sheets, so they're familiar with what the costs are going to be in the transaction.
Yes.
And if they want to have a conversation with you before they sign with me, I also offer that, and I welcome that, so that they know who the team is, that is going to be part of their transaction, because I'm only one person of that transaction. There's going to be a lot of people in that transactions.
Yes.
Some people that I choose and some people that I don't choose. I don't choose the other side's agent, unfortunately.
Right.
I wish I did, or the buyer.
Right.
But it's very important to know who your team is.
Yeah, I was thinking about the conversation that we were going to have today. And escrow is it's a team sport, and you need everyone to be a team player. And so if you have an escrow officer who really can't pull their weight, right, by bringing solutions to the table and understanding that we're all here with the common goal of a successful closing, it can cause delays. A lack of knowledge can actually hurt the deal.
Yeah. And we'll talk later on about how you process all the different emotions on both sides. Because I know, at least for me, like that has been part of my personal journey in my personal growth, life, is just learning how to deal with the emotions and not letting it really get into you. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. So I think this is probably one of the most important topics, at least for me, because I am caught right now in a wire fraud scandal.
Wow.
Nothing that I had any control over,
Sure.
but it does happen, right? So let's talk about wire fraud and other scams that are prevalent in Los Angeles in this high stakes game of luxury real estate that we're in. So let's talk about how you deal with the deposit and the potential of wire fraud within the escrow transaction.
Okay, so to start, and it is a huge thing. It's very crucial, and wire fraud is still a lot more common, unfortunately, than it should be in our industry. The way that we handle a deposit, we send it to the buyers securely, and we only copy the buyers on those communications. And we request that the buyer contact us. Even though you receive the wire instructions securely, we still want you to call us and verbally verify the account number. We want to make sure that the account number you see on your screen is actually that there was no change between me sending it and you receiving it. Because that is like one of the number one ways that wire fraud happens. The fraudster is out there and they intercept that email. Somebody in the transaction's email is compromised. Sometimes it's escrow. Sometimes it's an agent if you're copying an agent, or a TC, or the buyer themselves. But they intercept that message and they change the wire instructions, and it happens so quickly. And they'll copy escrow's signature blocks, and it will look official to the buyer, and they'll provide a phone number for the buyers to call, and it's not where the money should go. So we definitely encourage, and it would be great if agents could also encourage like their clients, call the number from their website.
100%.
You get an email, even when you get our secure email, Google us, look us up, and call the main line on the website to make sure you're speaking with the correct company, because that is the main way a fraudster gets in the middle and changes the wire instructions. So that's what we try to mitigate that by sending them via securely and then verbally verifying them. But on the other side, you also have seller wire fraud. That happens.
Oh, yeah.
That happens in a similar, one of the most common ways that seller wire fraud happens. Again, someone's email is compromised, but escrow holder, now we get our wire instructions notarized. We must receive notarized wire instructions. We verbally call the seller.
From the seller?
Oh, yes.
Oh, great. I didn't know that.
So when we get the grant deed notarized, the wire instructions go out with that package. And even then, we verbally verify the account information. But let's say it's the week of closing. Escrow receives an email from the seller. You know what? I actually want to change my wire instructions. I want the money to go to this account instead. And if you're not diligent as an escrow officer, you're not going to pay attention to that extra letter in the email address to see that it's not your client, or the way where the period is placed to see that it's a different email. And you're going to send money based on that. So it, again, like verbal verification, and that's why it's important to connect with the buyers and sellers during your transaction is key, because wire fraud happens in those two primary ways.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example of what we're going through right now in this wire fraud deal. It's like robbing a bank with no repercussion. Like these guys are in third world countries,
Yep.
or here in the States. Like it doesn't matter. They're on a computer,
Hard to
and they're
find.
stealing millions of dollars without any, like, I mean, they may get caught, but a lot of them don't get caught. Most of them don't get caught.
Yeah.
And the money is transferred into a random bank, and then it's sent to like a Bitcoin. And then once it's in Bitcoin, see you later.
It's gone.
It's gone. Like you have like
Yeah.
you can try to sue the whole transaction and try to get some insurance money, but at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you're going to lose a lot of money.
Yes.
So I always tell my clients, I will never send you wire instructions
Yes.
ever.
Ever.
So if you get an email from me that looks like me, Paul at paulsalazargroups with an s.com,
Yes.
with the same signature, that is not me. Because I've already gone through it one time, and it was very sad for all sides, especially the buyer, because the escrow's email got hacked. So they saw the entire transaction happening at this entire time. They didn't care about the 3% deposit. They wanted the final closing funds on an all cash transaction. They're going for the big money.
That's where we see it happen the most.
Yeah. And my client lost, $2 million. And that's a lot of money
It's a lot.
to lose. And it's like, you always think that there's some insurance out there, but there really isn't.
No.
So it's just really important. And for those buyers out there that have money managers and or they have like trust managers, that a lot of times these people do not call to verify the numbers, which is crazy. If it's your money, you should make that call.
Yeah.
Don't rely on anybody else unless they have insurance to cover that issue.
And wire fraud insurance in particular, specifically. Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys have wire fraud insurance?
We do.
Okay,
Yes.
got it. Is it up to a certain amount, or how does that?
It is. I'm not sure
Okay.
the limit,
Okay.
but you have to have that additional rider.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, the money's gone.
The money's caught.
And
Yeah,
it can take years to recover even a portion
yeah,
of it,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
yeah. How about other scams? What is there anything else that you're seeing out there that buyers and sellers should be aware of?
Yes. So right now, I hate to put it this way. So like for a time, wire fraud was trending.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Now, and it still happens, of course, but now there are other things that are trending as well. Some really red flags, like high risk transactions, are vacant land, properties that are free and clear, properties that have an out-of-state seller. Because what we're seeing a lot of is seller impersonations. Yes. And so someone is impersonating the seller because it's,
It's easy nowadays.
It's easy.
Like, yeah.
It's super easy. And people are also hijacking LLC entities, creating fake operating agreements. People are creating fake trust agreements as well. So those are huge red flags. And we've had situations, for example, I myself had a transaction. It was earlier this year, a vacant lot. The seller on paper lived in Florida, let's say, like out of state. But once the deal opened, the agent's like, oh, well, the seller is actually out of the country and their wife is sick. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. They'll need to go to the U.S. Embassy in order to notarize their documents. Well, because the wife is sick, they can't go to the embassy per se. And I said, well, okay, let me set up RON, remote online notarization.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Right, because they have U.S. citizenship and or a green card. So let me use RON. The RON service was able to notify us after the transaction that we think this is a deep fake.
After the transaction?
I mean, after the signing.
Oh,
so they did
okay.
not after the transaction.
Okay.
So sorry. They did the RON notarization, and same day, I received a notification. We think that this is deep fake video, that this is not real. Wow. Yeah, and then...
Yeah, because nowadays it's like with AI, it's like you have no idea.
It is. So you really need to make sure that all of your service providers along the way, like everyone is just being more and more cautious. Because once I got that back, it was like, okay, well, I asked the agent, have you met the seller in person? Agent representing both sides. Have you met the seller in person? Well, they sent me a copy of their ID. Okay. And so, of course, once that comes back that you failed Ron, basically, you have to go to the embassy. That's the only way we'll close. Oh, I won't be able to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
The deal canceled.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
can't, you like,
Well,
but
good.
that was
I mean,
definitely
that's
someone impersonating
yeah.
the owner. So that happens a lot. That's one thing, seller impersonation on those property types. Something else that we've seen this year, a buyer deposits. So for the deposit, right? Typically the contract says it should be a wire transfer, but sometimes the parties agree to a check. Buyer deposits a check into escrow. A few days later, not even enough time for the check to clear, the buyer wants to cancel and wants us to wire the deposit to them, to wire it back to them.
Oh.
You deposited a check. It's check fraud. So that's starting to happen as well.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But the check hasn't cleared yet, I'm assuming, right?
Right.
That's why
they're trying to cancel, let's say like 2 days later, 1 or 2 days later. You know what? I changed my mind. I want to cancel the transaction, but I don't want you to issue me a check. I want you to wire the money back to me. Like,
Wow.
no.
Oh my gosh.
Highly
Yeah,
suspicious.
Yeah.
So those are some of the ways that are happening as well. And even on hard money transactions, we have to be careful because people are defrauding hard money lenders to put liens on properties and pull money out.
Pull money out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah, it's so easy nowadays to do it.
Yeah.
With all the AI stuff, all the technology to
Yes.
really try to scam somebody. So everybody's got to be on super high alert.
Yes.
Know who you're working with. Double check everything.
Yes.
Make sure that your email is two-factor
multi-factor
yes.
authentication, definitely.
Always,
Yes. Yes.
Because if not, it's just a matter of time until something's gonna happen.
Yeah, definitely. And as escrow holder, if I can never get a seller or a buyer on the phone, like really, you can't call me back just once.
That's a red
flag.
flag. It's a red flag for sure.
You know,
Yeah.
like I can't get a hold of you. There's the delay in receiving your signed documentation back. Like something's going on.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
And that reminds me, you said land, right? And there's a lot of land deals
Vacant
going
land.
on
Oh,
right
yes.
now in the Palisades. So, for all those Palisades homeowners right now, just make sure that you're aware that your lot is safe, because it actually happened to a client of mine in Brentwood from the Getty fire,
Oh, wow.
where his property was sold underneath him, and he had to get it back, but that buyer lost all the money because
Yeah.
they bought this lot and
From the wrong seller.
From the wrong seller.
And it's a nightmare to unwind those type of deals. That's why, like in particular, for land, like we will mail a notice and an identity affidavit to the address on the tax roll. Because, we figure if your property tax bill is going there, like that is your property address. I had an escrow officer in my branch do that, right? So sent it, vacant land, all cash buyer. It's almost always all cash buyers too when it's seller fraud going on. Mails the form to the address on the tax roll. The buyer calls. I don't know why your office sent this to me. They sent it to the wrong address. We know very well that we sent it to the seller's address on the tax roll.
Yeah.
That was a deal we had to decline because
Wow.
it's just like, no, we're not taking any chances.
Yeah.
And in particular, I don't know if you've heard about AB 851.
Yes. It just went into effect last week.
It just went
Yeah.
into effect, but it does impact the properties, whether it's vacant land or even the homes that are in or near the burn areas. So it's this new attestation, basically, that the buyer did not make an unsolicited offer, that buyers and sellers have to now sign and notarize. So I think that provides another layer of protection for properties in those vulnerable areas.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Is there anything that escrow companies are doing at large, like not just yours, but I guess the whole industry, to kind of fight this, all these scams? Is there anything new coming up or?
No,
or is just,
I think
just kind of constant keeping your eyes out for like red flags?
it really is constantly keeping your eyes out for red flags. And I think that the things that we do, a lot of escrow companies are doing them because there really is only so much as a third party that we can do. So, but being vigilant, it's just about being vigilant in a variety of ways across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I think we've either scared everybody or at least educated them on, what to do and what not to do when it comes to sending wires. So you've been doing this for a couple of years.
Sure. Yeah, a few.
Tell us about some of the deal killers that are happening, that are constant, like things that you're seeing more often as like deal killers, either from the buyer side or from the seller side.
One of the biggest things, although I would say the insurance industry is starting to figure it out and it's getting better, but this year, as you can imagine, purchasing property in certain areas, either the buyer's not able to get property insurance at all, which would kill the deal, or it just takes longer to get because you really have to shop it around to different providers, which can sometimes cause a delay in the transaction. I would say that that's like the primary thing for now and as of this year. Other deal killers, I would say, are really just going back to disputes between buyers and sellers that can't be worked out, because maybe one side is more emotional than the other. The buyer's ability, of course, to get financing can be
always,
an issue.
Always, yeah.
But the problem with that is a lot of times, another red flag there is if you have a loan broker or a lender, we send out inquiries for loan status periodically throughout the transaction. And if we get to a certain point where your responses are vague, you're not giving us an ETA for final loan approval, you're not giving us an ETA for a clear to close, which we need in order to get loan docs, that starts to send up a red flag. So sometimes on the loan side, things break down and they're definitely slow to let escrow know. Yeah,
for sure. And I think, we're actually lucky here in LA. A lot of the transactions are all cash, which is nice.
Surprisingly.
I know. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason why sellers prefer all cash, even if it's a little bit less, because it's a easier transaction.
A safer bet.
Yeah, for sure. So for those out there that are kind of wondering, buyers can back out of a deal, right?
Yes.
They have their contingencies.
Yes.
But once a seller signs off, and there's acceptance, right? Sellers cannot legally back out of a deal. So let's talk about that.
That seems a little unfair, right? It is very difficult.
It is. It's kind of strange, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very. Now, of course, the seller has a couple of avenues available to them. Let's say the buyer's not performing, and they issue a notice to perform, and the buyer does not perform within the given deadline, whether it's 48 hours or 72. Then the seller can unilaterally cancel the transaction. But short of that, for a seller to just change their mind, I think I want to hold on to it, there really is no avenue for that. And only once in my career, in the very beginning, I did have a seller who basically just had a change of heart. It dragged on for maybe 2 years and ended up going to court. That was my first time going to court as a witness. Yeah. So sellers, the options are very limited.
Yeah.
You would.
So that buyer really wanted the property. The seller stayed in the house for 2 years, I'm assuming, right?
Well, yes.
Yeah, because they're like, I'm not moving out.
I'm not moving. I'm not leaving.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
now, of
2
course,
years.
it goes to court and the seller did have to give up the property. But it just really does speak to, for a seller, it's really hard to change your mind.
Yeah. But the good thing is that the seller has enough time, usually, unless it's like an off-market deal, to make a decision, right? Like they're obviously, if you put it on the market, you're getting the house ready for the market. You have all this time. So
you would think so, right?
Yeah.
Before you go to contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's just really important for both the buyer and the seller. And now with ChatGPT, it's so easy to ask questions, throw the contract onto chat and just ask questions, or ask your agent, what are my rights here? what's going to happen during the transaction, because for us in the business, it's like we already know what's going to happen, and so we're used to it.
Right.
But for the buyer and the seller, even if they've done it several times, they might not haven't done a transaction in 5 or 6 years, and you kind of forget all the small little nuances within a transaction. So before you sign a contract, make sure you ask the questions.
Yes.
Understand what your outs are. If you don't have any outs and you want to cancel, then what's going to happen.
Right.
Understanding everything is super, super important.
It is upfront.
So, all right, let's go to the next topic. Is what makes escrow here in LA unique compared to other areas? I know we have ULA, so we could talk a little bit about ULA, or the great city transfer tax that just went into effect a few years ago.
Yes.
But what other things make LA escrow unique?
So we'll save ULA for the end. I think the things that make LA unique are some of the things that commonly make Southern California escrow unique, particularly with LA City and LA County. The recording process is different. It's delayed. And when there's a loan involved, we're always having to explain to lenders, we can sign and fund on the same day, but we cannot fund and record on the same day for LA County. The LA County recorder is not allowed that yet.
Which is crazy to think, because it's like they do so many transactions.
But I don't know if maybe
why is that?
That is why, because they have such a high volume of documentation that they record on a daily basis. I'm not sure. So for LA, it is kind of like a buyer can sign loan documents and think that that's it. Okay, that's it, right? I get the keys the next day.
Closing,
and it's like, no, not yet. You're going to sign documents. And then if there are outstanding funding conditions, that might add another day or two, depending on what the condition is. And then we have funding, and then we have closing. So sometimes even for the buyer and seller, it can seem like an extended journey from the point we have docs to closing. Now, if it's all cash, well, it's still the same thing. It's a 24-hour delay. Whereas in some other counties, like San Bernardino County, Ventura County,
same day,
fund in
the morning and record later on.
Yeah. So we have that kind of like multi-step closing process in LA, which I think slows things down just a little bit. Also, in regards to ULA, I mean, gosh, it's been difficult. It's been difficult. And I know a lot of people are like, well, it only impacts like rich people or property at a certain level. But it's just like, no, it's just
impacts everybody.
It impacts everything. Like it's expensive, and for the sellers who I see who have to pay that additional, because it's when your transfer tax is almost like, I explain it to sellers, like it's almost like a sales tax when you sell your property, right? So the county, LA County, gets $1.10 per thousand of the purchase price. The city typically gets $4.50 of the purchase price. When we throw in ULA, it's the $4.50 per thousand plus the additional percentage on the entire purchase price.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Yeah. And at a certain level, we've seen it kind of slow down luxury real estate. 100%. Of course, the transactions are still happening.
Yeah, but it's definitely slowed down. There's definitely manipulation of how buyers are paying for the commission sometimes to offset.
Yeah, going from creative.
Yeah, I mean you kind of have to. Nobody wants to pay it.
Yeah, we can only hope that it's being used for its intended purpose.
Yeah,
but so that's something that, if I have like an agent who has a pre-listing on a deal that's over 5.3, I might open a pre-escrow, but that pre-escrow, like, it can be in the works for just a lot longer than some of the lower price points that we see. So that's kind of...
What do you mean a pre-escrow? What does that mean?
So, thank you. A pre-escrow.
I don't think I've ever opened up a pre-escrow. Maybe I'm learning something new today.
No, you do have them.
Oh, okay.
So a pre-escrow is when you have a client, an agent, who gets a listing and wants to really be proactive.
Yes, we do this all the time.
you do it all the time, you and your team. So ahead of time, you want to order the prelim. We want to tackle any issues up front. We're ordering city reports. Do we have brush lien issues that we have to get cleared? We're ordering the NHD HOA documents. Are there special assessments? Maybe that the seller forgot were coming up that we need to be cognizant of, all before actually going under contract. So, which is actually, I love it when agents do that, because once we go into contract, like we're flying,
Smooth
like
sailing.
everything, it's smooth sailing. That helps the transaction move a lot faster. But at these higher price levels, it's just like you're waiting and you're waiting. It's a detriment, I think, to everyone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always like doing it because, like you said, it just makes that escrow process, which is always going to be a lot going on with with all the different parties and all the signatures, so much easier.
Yes.
And you're able to provide the buyer with these things before. So if you're in a multiple situation, you can even try to negotiate for that seller, for that buyer to remove certain contingencies
Ahead of time.
right?
Yes,
Because they've already
definitely.
reviewed them.
See it all the time. Yes.
Yeah. So again, if you're a seller out there, ask your agent to do that and be proactive because it's really important.
Yeah, and it's just a great way of tackling any issues ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk about, because we're talking about what makes escrow in LA unique. Let's talk about the city report, the 9A. It's only for the city of LA, but I think other cities have their other kind of version of it, right?
Yes, other cities have their version of it. Culver City, Inglewood, Pasadena. These are other examples of Huntington Park. They have their own version of it. The thing with what I really found with the LA city report, more so than any other city, is that, it tells us, number one, if there's a sewer connection, if there's a sewer permit for that connection. I guess it's a great thing to know, but
yeah,
you flush the toilet.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
it could be on septic.
It could be on septic.
Right?
That's true. Depending on where you are, maybe
Correct.
in the canyons. Yeah. But also, it reveals to us, like, if it's in a high fire hazard zone, that is on the city report. It's in the language of the city report. And then also if there are any brush clearance liens, because of course certain properties in high fire hazard areas, every year the city has to come out and inspect. And if sellers are not keeping up with those payments for the inspections, the city does put a lien. And the thing is, why the city report is so important, the brush liens do not show on the title report.
Only on the city report.
Only on the city report.
Yeah. I mean, we actually had one transaction last year where we're repping the buyer and the seller had a huge lien. I think it was like, I don't know, it was like in the tens of thousands. It was not cheap.
Wow. Yeah.
To do, I mean, it was a big lot
Yeah.
with a huge hillside, so they had to clear that.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, then we had to figure out, all right, it delayed closing for like for several weeks until we had to figure out if the seller was actually going to do the work and then
Yes.
have the fire department come back and
Inspect.
and inspect it and waive it, all this stuff. So it's also really important, again, if you're a buyer or a seller, try to get that report as soon as possible.
Yes.
Because the city also takes how long to get that report to you?
So once the 9A city report, it takes maybe about 7 business days. But if a lien is revealed and we have to order a demand for a lien, it can take up to 15 business days.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And
So
there's no rush request
Yeah.
on that.
No, of
as
course not.
well. So
Yeah.
you just have to wait. And again, even in your example, you're talking about a $10,000 cost to the transaction that it does not come up on the prelim. So there would have been no other way to know about it except through the city report.
Yeah, and it also reveals if there's any if there's any unpermitted spaces that the city shows as like a violation, right?
It can,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And other cities are similar. If there's unpermitted, let's say it's an ADU, or you did some work on the home and there were no permits, that might be revealed on other city reports as well.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that there's, like, if you're a buyer watching this, it doesn't mean that if you're buying a house and it's not on the report, it doesn't mean that the house doesn't have unpermitted spaces. It just means that the city doesn't know about it.
Correct.
Yes, exactly. So there's a lot of unpermitted spaces here in LA. So what makes LA real estate also pretty special is that a lot of these houses are under trust. And And, we're talking about high value properties
Yes.
that are left in trust. Some are not left in trust, and it has to go through a probate process.
Yes.
So let's quickly dive into what that looks like. If you're a trust, how that's set up, how if you're a seller and you're looking to put your kids on the trust, like what are some best practices for that? And let's talk about what that probate process looks like if the trust is not set up in a way that will facilitate an easy transaction.
Well, so I'll speak to that to the best that I can as escrow holder.
Yes.
When property is held in a trust, we want to get the trust agreement as soon as possible so that we can verify whoever is acting on behalf of the trust is authorized to do so. If an original trustee is deceased, we'll need an affidavit death of trustees. A lot of times, trustees don't know that they have to record this, that it's important to provide consistency to the chain of title, to the chain of ownership for the property. So we want to, if we need an affidavit, we want to make sure we have that. If we need to track down any trustees, well, what happened to John Doe? Well, I don't know what happened to him, but I just assume I can sign by myself. Well, no, we have to figure this out. So we want to make sure that there is consistency across the board. Now, in the event that there are trust issues, right? So, I guess to back up, sellers can make changes to their trust too, even like right before escrow opens, like during the listing process, or even at the beginning of their trust. If you have trustees, they want to like designate someone else to sign on behalf of the trust, they can do so at that time. If they want to make any kind of update or changes, cut somebody out of the trust, like they can do all of that as well. Even once the property is under escrow, we accept amendments to trust all the time. When properties, if we have someone who is deceased, and let's say their ownership was not in a trust, which makes it very easy to know, like, okay, to follow just the rules of succession, then we are talking about a probate situation. If you are opening escrow and you find out that you have a probate situation, that kills the deal, by the way. We talk about deal killers.
Yeah,
well,
there you go.
once you and we've had that happen before, right? Because multiple people might be on title, and you'll just assume that the deceased party, their interest passes to you. But if you are not joint tenants, it's not in a trust, no, that other interest is not automatically passed to the surviving owner. So now we've got to deal with probate, which can take months to years, depending on the estate. So we do also handle like court-ordered probates. So those are transactions that have already cleared the probate process. But again, dealing with trust just as we would any other entity, we have to verify that the signer is legally authorized to act. And that's a big thing.
Yeah. It's really important for if you're looking to sell in the next 5-10 years, or you're getting to an age where that at some point this house is going to be belong to your kids, and you want your kids to have it or your grandkids to have it, like whatever it is. Make sure you talk to your trust attorney.
Yes.
Get that paperwork done. Where should they store this paperwork at?
So
is that like is because
I'm just thinking of what I told my parents and where we keep ours. So I think when it comes to your trust documentation, you should have a copy. You should have a digital copy in this day and age, right? I think one of your successor trustees should have either a digital or a physical copy. You should have a physical copy somewhere safe at home, and you're safe at home. And then I think it's also good to have a physical copy in a bank safety deposit box. Because people lose trust agreements all the time, especially if you're a son or daughter and your parents have passed and you're the successor trustee. Well, your parents created the trust 30 years ago, and now you can't find that documentation.
Yeah. So what happens?
We have to prove.
So does the attorney have?
Sometimes.
Yeah, but if they don't and they're deceased themselves, or there's like you can't reach them.
Right. If we have situations where we have someone who says that they're a successor trustee and they have no documentation, we turn to our title officer and say, what will you accept? Give us some options, because title has to ensure the transaction at the end of the day. So what will you accept? I have had situations where maybe new trusts have been drawn up, or they were able to find something to show that, like, yes, this was my parents. Yes, this was the intention, or even based on a will, to be able to have some flexibility over that. Because a will, which is different than a trust, and people should have both, a will is also going to say, like, yes, I want all of my effects to go to my son and daughter. So when we're presented with that son and daughter who are having difficulty finding paperwork, it gives us something.
Yeah.
We need something to go off of. Because again, seller
Once it goes to
impersonation
probate,
fraud, anyone could create a trust document.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think the advice is just if you own any properties, get a trust.
Yes.
Put in a trust and then record it.
Never.
Wait, you don't.
Never.
Well, you want to record the actual
interest.
Trust name onto title. Correct. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
What were you saying though? No,
well,
to
you
what?
said to record the trust. I thought you meant the trust agreement.
Okay, so you only record the trust name.
The vesting.
Yeah,
yes.
the vesting.
Yes.
But you do not record the actual trust agreement. Do people do that?
Unwisely so. I've seen people, because again, a trust, that's your own financial planning tool. It is very personal.
Oh, it should not be on public record.
Yeah, once you record something, it becomes a public record.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Anyone who pays $25 can go down and pull a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we have had, and sometimes people don't even know that they shouldn't. We'll have sellers who say, you know what, I am actually like creating my trust and I want to close out my vesting in a trust. Like, do I need to record it? And it's like, it comes up as a question. It's like, no, you do not record the trust agreement.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear.
Yes.
But
the vested interest to the trust, yes, you want to record that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Let's talk about, and I know we covered this a little bit, but let's do a quick step-by-step on what happens during funding day and then recording day. I know there's two separate days, but let's talk about what happens both for loans and for all cash transactions.
It's actually a good question, because a lot of times when we use the word funding for a seller, they think that that's when they're going to get their net proceeds.
Sorry.
Right. So whether it's a loan or all cash, for escrow, funding is the day that two things. If it's all cash, it's the day that we receive the balance of the buyer's closing funds. We already have their deposit, and it's when we receive the remainder. So to complete the price plus closing costs. If there is a loan involved, the day of funding, typically we have to have the buyer closing funds either on the day of funding or before, because it's a funding condition. The lender wants to see that you have put your portion, you've deposited it into escrow.
Before they do.
Yeah,
Makes
before
sense.
they do.
Yeah.
Yes. And so funding at that point becomes when the lender sends the loan portion to title. They should not send it to escrow. It should go to title, because title is insuring.
Got
it.
Okay. So lenders send money to title.
That is the day of funding when there is a loan involved. So in either version, once final funds have been delivered, whether to escrow or to title, that's the day of funding. Particularly talking about LA, then the next business day is the day of recording. Title sends, now it's digital, right? They used to have people go down there and stand in line, but now it's digital. So title sends the grant deed and anything else that has to be recorded, an affidavit, the deed of trust. They send it to the LA County recorder. And once the county basically scans that document in and stamps it, ownership has changed. At that point.
When do you find out when that's done? Is that like immediately? You get an email?
It's not immediate, because it's so multi-layered. So escrow tells title, hey, we're ready to close. Please release the recordables, the grant deed or the deed of trust. Release them to the county. Title does that. Title gets notification from the county recorder first. And I can only hope that within like an hour or so, they notify escrow. It's title who notifies escrow. Escrow, I know for us, we then notify the agents, because sometimes agents, they rightfully so, they want to share that great news with their client.
With their clients.
Yeah. And then that's the day of closing. So even then there's a delay, because title has to wait for the county. Escrow has to wait for title to notify.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then once that's done, that's when like the transaction is closed and then the new owner is now
Yes.
the owner.
That is when the transaction is technically closed. Now, a lot of times seller will say, I don't want to turn over keys until I
I
receive
get my money. Yes.
There's no agreement anywhere that says you have to have your money first on the day of closing in order for the buyer to take possession. The buyer legally has the right to possession unless there's
Other agreements made. Yes.
other agreements. The minute recording confirmation is received, because what if we close on a Friday and it's late on a Friday and it's past our outgoing wire cutoff time and we can't send you the funds till Monday?
Yeah.
The buyer still has a right if we're closed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I remember when I first started real estate in 06, the seller usually moved out 2 or 3 days after close of escrow.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Not like now. It's like the day before they actually move out, and then once it records, then they hand over the keys in some form.
Right. And I wonder if that is just like standard practice, right? Because the contract says, and I recently had to talk a seller off a ledge on this, because it's like the contract says date of possession is the day of closing. So the seller wants to know, well, why do I need to be out early just so they can do their final walkthrough? Like, no, I need every single second. And so how do you, as escrow holder, how do you answer that and massage that and encourage the seller to feel confident and see the wisdom and moving out maybe a day ahead of time?
Yeah. It's much better because we also don't know when it's going to record. It can record at 8 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Or at 6 p.m. Or 5. Is it 5?
It can record as late as 5 for some counties.
Yeah.
Definitely.
LA,
I would say, like, practically speaking, maybe the latest confirmation I got was like 4 p.m. But maybe it was a heavy a recording date.
Because I remember once I didn't get notified until late. It was like 6 p.m. or something. I'm like, what's
every
going
once
on?
in a while it happens.
Yeah.
Depending on their volume.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the future of escrow. I know earlier I talked about like what are you guys doing to help with the scams, but let's talk about the future of escrow. Is there anything that you see that is going to be changing in the near future now with AI? Give us some thoughts on where you see it going.
Well, I definitely hope that the human element remains at the forefront of the escrow process, just as like fraud prevention warriors, right? But there's been a lot of changes just since I've started my escrow career. The fact of electronic signing, whether you're using DocuSign or some other platform,
Which I love.
Right?
Oh my gosh, thank God.
Buyers and sellers can execute their documents anywhere in the world.
Amazing. On their phones.
Literally.
Yeah.
When I first started, we were printing packages and either mailing them out or sending them via FedEx, and they were this thick.
Yeah.
And we had to include a big prepaid envelope for them to mail stuff back to us. So it allows the transactions to move faster. And it provides more flexibility with the remote online notarization as well for U.S. citizens or green card holders. The fact now that someone's in Europe vacationing for the summer, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They can still get notarized. We can still close on time. That type of flexibility, not having to deal with the U.S. Embassy, oh my gosh, it's huge. And even I know for us, we're even looking at ways that AI can help just really make us more vigilant, right? When it comes to processes for fraud, and then also just make us more effective in our processes and make us more effective communicators with our clients as well. So I really do think the next thing for escrow companies is finding out how to work with AI versus seeing it as it's not going to take our jobs.
No. I think real estate is safe because people need other people in this, at least in this industry, to get these things done.
It's such a relationship heavy industry, but I think that there are still opportunities to use AI for all of us to make us even more nimble in our jobs.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so thank you for all the tips for the sellers and buyers. We will leave your contact down below if they have any questions. Your email. Feel free to email Kilita. Let's talk about what the future holds for you, Kilita, and then what is your philosophy on your business? Is it helping out? Is it helping agents first? Is it helping out the buyers and sellers? What's your philosophy?
Well, I'll start there, like with my client philosophy. Um, my fiduciary responsibility is to buyers and sellers, but I do see agents and lenders and loan brokers also as my clients. And as I mentioned earlier, I truly do see escrow as a team sport, and I want to make sure that I'm bringing to the table grace and kindness to help all parties navigate through the escrow process because it can become extremely stressful. And I want to be a calming presence for my agents and for buyers and sellers. And I also want to make sure like I'm solution driven. If presented with the problem, I want to help buyers, sellers, agents like, how do we tackle this? How do we successfully move forward? And here's some creative options that you may not have considered. So that's really how I really see my role as being a calming presence, but also being a source of expertise and knowledge for my clients.
Yeah. And I think you do a great job at that. And I think this is why I am always so excited to be like, don't worry, I got the best escrow officer in town. She's amazing. And you do have a great calming presence. And that's so important in a transaction with high emotions.
Yes.
And I've also learned myself to try to be that calming presence. It takes a lot of work. So let's like talk about that because like I'm really into, I got a thing here about healing. I got something here about like meditating.
Yes.
Because that's really important to me. It's like what are some of your practices to like, because you have I mean I'm doing maybe one or two transactions at any given time, maybe 3 or 4, but you're probably doing a lot. So you're dealing with a lot of different people all the time, phone calls, emails. How do you deal with that? What's your practice? And you have a family.
And I have a family. Kids, it's a lot. Yes. I don't know if they'll agree with my business philosophy because there is a difference. But I really operate from a place of wanting to be of service. And I think when you want to be of service to others, it is going to affect and characterize how you communicate. What do you do when a seller who doesn't want to move out literally with her 12 cats and she's breaking down crying on the phone? Or you have a buyer who is livid, they're not talking to their agent, they refuse to talk to their agent, and you need to figure it out and make it work. There's so much that we deal with, and I think still being mindful, like I want to be of service to everyone. Like they don't do this, like buyers, sellers, they don't do this on it. I can do escrow in my sleep, and having grace and kindness and empathy, it just goes such a long way, and it honestly helps make my job easier for me, like coming from that perspective. And I'm not taking it personal. You can't.
No, you can't. If you do, then you're gone. See you later.
No, because you're going to be disrespected every day.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. Agents can be snarky and condescending. Buyers and sellers, because they're frustrated maybe with each other or outside forces, they bring that to bear on escrow. You can't take any of that in. And so I think that's kind of like my secret sauce, being mindful and staying in that, like, I'm providing a service and the quality of that service, that's what's important to me.
Yeah.
That's what I want to protect. So
I love that. I think we'll end it at that.
Yeah.
Kalita's secret sauce.
Yes.
Yes. And I again, very, very grateful that you're part of our team.
Likewise.
Because it always feels good to just to know that my clients are in good hands. All the time. So thank you for what you do, for being mindful, for being always respectful, for being on time, and just for being a joy to work with in an industry, like we said earlier, that can be very chaotic and can be very disruptive to your nervous system.
Yes.
Even Isabella says, "Oh, I love talking to like Kilita because she's just so nice and she's so sweet." So thank you for everything you do. We really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. Again, we'll leave Kilita's contact information in the comments as well as in the description. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this, and we'll see you next week. Bye. See you later.